Good evening, everybody, and welcome back. It's time for the year-end Creative Cranium. Tonight, we're going to take a look at some of the top projects that we've seen in 2024. Before we do that, though, let's take a quick spin around the room and introduce our panel to the viewers. I'm going to start with you, Judah. Tell us who you are and what you're mostly known for.
Hello, everybody. I'm Judah Rad. I guess you could say I'm mostly known as the president and CEO of Trouble Studios. We published Charon 13, the spy-fi epic of 2023 and 2024. But yeah, really happy to be here, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Happy New Year to you, and thanks for coming. I think your book looks great, by the way. I'm going to say.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Our next guest, JD, thank you for filling in for Chad, who was sick tonight. I know who you are, but please tell the viewers who you are.
All right, my name is JD Calderon. I'm the writer and creator of the Oswald Chronicles, Magi's Grace, Tall Tales, Dreamweavers, and a few other things. And there you go. And I have a podcast on Sundays.
Yeah, a good one.
I try.
Welcome to the show, JD. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Next up, my fellow ghost sighting analyst, Jeffrey Burant. Jeffrey,
Hi,
welcome to the show.
Thank you. I guess I'm best known for writing the Oni Press graphic novel, Shenaz and the Odd Squad. I've got Ghost Planet from Scout Comics, and I just finished a successful Kickstarter with Gonad the Barbarian.
Great name.
Yeah.
Hey, man, welcome, and thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
So without further delay, we're going to jump right in. This has been a big year for Kickstarter projects and for indie creator projects in general. And most of us have some experience with crowdfunding, but there's some real standouts this year. And I thought it'd be a great time to take a look at it. So one of the things I did was to give a quick call to action on social media. And man, right away, I got a banger. Do you guys know about this? Mask of the Red Death, a musical thriller by industry titans Wendy and Richard Pini, which I was a huge fan of already. We'll circle back around to the early stuff, but this is the new thing they're working on. So the first thing is I'm a fan of music and art being mixed together. Judah, what's your thought on musical projects that mix art and music?
I love them. I think if there's ever an opportunity to infuse what you're doing with music and to make something multimedia, that's the way to go. And you wouldn't believe it because I'm mostly a heavy metal guy, but I'm also kind of a big fan of musical theater. So
no kidding,
all about that.
Yeah, do you got a favorite element of music theater? Or a favorite show, anything like that?
Yeah, not to be super basic, but I really love Les Miserables.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. It's
what's not to love?
Real exciting. I tried to make a metal version of the song Confrontation, where Jean Valjean and Javert are like singing over each other. And I made it on GarageBand. It's terrible. I'm not going to show anybody, but it's a lot of fun to do.
Well, the one thing I want to say about this project, and I'm going to include the web links in the comments, but man, what a gutsy call, right? Like a musical version and art and Edgar Allan Poe. And it's also like a post-apocalyptic version. JD, I'm going to make a wild guess here. ElfQuest fan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a long time, yes.
Yeah. So you probably already knew about this project.
No, I didn't. I actually didn't. I don't keep that tight of an eye. I mean, the Peonies are my heroes in independent publishing, but I don't keep that tight of an eye on.
Right. So as a creator, this was Warp Graphics, am I right? In the early days for them?
Yes. So Warp Graphics, yes.
And some of the earliest indie comic titans. So let me ask you this. How does the road lead? Like, this is a long journey, right? Like, I love ElfQuest and I love all the characters. How does this lead to musical theater?
I mean, obviously, I saw Wendy's name up there, and obviously she's a creator who's involved in all kinds of different media. And I'm pretty sure I think they came to the end of the road on ElfQuest. So like any creator, she wants to expand and probably do something a little different. You can't blame her. And this is obviously something unique. She's probably having a great, time of her life doing this.
Yeah, what a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this one's super successful. I hope they make $1 million.
Did you say that this takes place in a post-apocalyptic?
Yeah, like by the way, I'm just learning about this.
Okay, 'cause I'm familiar with the Edgar Allan Poe story. Is like King locks himself up during a plague, and then
get this: in Earth's far future, in the technologically advanced megacity of Savarsi 9, the one world government mainframe oversees all. I love this already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost hard to see how it connects together, but I mean, I already know they're good writers and great storytellers, so I'm sure it will. Jeffrey, how about you? Musical theater part of your passions, or what's your take?
Well, music and comic books, definitely. Oddfellows and the Odd Squad that I mentioned before from Oni Press was a kind of a tween-friendly version of my own rock band that I was in New York City called Americans UK. We were a science fiction rock band, and I would self-publish our science fiction adventures as black and white comics and trying to sell them at the merch table. And then when I had the chance to pitch to Oni, I basically did the family-friendly version of that. And that's what Oddfellows was. And we produced an entire soundtrack to it. So anytime one of the bands played actually in the book, you could, at the time, you could go to oddfellows.com and go listen to that actual song that they're singing. We made a song by the band with us as adults playing, but then one of our keyboardists and the producer of the album had his niece was 16 years old at the time, which is about the age of the kids in the band, and she was in a School of Rock program, and so she was our singer. So it actually sounds like a teen punk band that we produced.
That's sick.
And then, so yeah, music has always been a big part of my life, and combining it with like other forms of media. And now it's, look, I love like Grease, the movie has been one of my favorite movies my entire life.
I love that one. Yeah.
So I love musicals, and even though I live in New York City, I don't go to musical theater that much. My 7-year-old daughter, starting to really get into it, and we all just loved like the Wicked movie part 1, kind of blew us all away. So yeah,
my daughter's the same. She's super into music theater, and I guess, I started out as if it was somehow an unusual road, and I guess I was trying to sound edgy, because I have noticed that among comic creators anyway, there's a link between guys that have been in bands and guys that make comics. And by the way, when I say guys, I mean guys and girls. Okay. I mean that as a broad term. When I say like being in a band, I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You got the colorist is the drummer, and the lead vocalist is the penciler, and it's the same dynamic.
Yeah. You think it's the DIY factor of like both being in a band and making a comic book are two things that anyone with the time and the drive can do. It's not like making a blockbuster movie where you need like investors and financing. It's like, well, you do need financing, but you know what I mean? Like there's a DIY factor to both of those things that I think is attractive to a lot of creative people.
I have one exit question on the music subject. I'll give this one to Jeffrey. Jeffrey, are you concerned about artificial intelligence replacing songwriting?
Boy, I don't know if it's probably already being done in ways that we don't even know yet. It's like backing tracks, and
right. I'm
sure it's been used for years to fix things like with auto-tune. There's already sort of an AI element there, right? Like the software is like catching bad notes and up-tuning them automatically to a G and things like that. So it depends on what we mean by AI, because what we're all talking about, I guess, is almost visual generative AI. And we know that it can recreate voices, but I don't know. I feel like I'm aging out of being an audience that anyone who's making these decisions cares about anymore anyway. So am I worried about it? Look, it's already difficult to make a living in any of the arts. So the idea, but there's going to be talented, trained musicians who figure out how to use it in ways that we can't imagine yet. We're at the beginning of a lot of this. So,
and remember, a great deal more so than illustration, music is mathematical.
Yeah. Right. And so it's really easy to imagine, like I listen to while I'm working the day job, I'll listen to like lots of like death wave and things or synth wave, dark wave tracks and stuff like that. That's basically like, listening to an industrial record without any vocals. And for all I know, half that is already just an AI machine spitting that stuff out. I don't know.
Well, let's wrap up the last of our indie projects. JD, I'm going to give you the last word, but here's my 2 cents. I immediately am interested in this project, Mask of the Red Death musical thriller. In my case, because of the pedigree coming from its creators, they have a long-standing reputation as really being the cream of the crop for what they're doing. What's your 2 cents worth, JD Calderon?
I mean, I don't know much about it, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. Is this a Kickstarter? Or
No, this is a.
Oh, as I see, it says on Amazon Prime Video. Okay, so I guess I'll go check it out there.
Yeah,
I mean, it looks really interesting.
And just the level of man, that is swinging for the fence, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, why not?
So has anyone seen its original incarnation as a graphic novel?
I have. There's one from the 80s, right? Or
of Mask of the Red Death, their Mask of the Red Death.
I think so.
So someone like one of their kids or something has a friend, or one of their kids is like, I produce musicals now, and like tap them on the shoulder. I bet.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Well,
Wendy, thanks so much for submitting that. It looks amazing, and I wish every success with that project. The next one I want to talk to you about, this is a guy I know through my history of making comics. In this case, it's Martin Dunn and the Pirates of Miskatonic. This is from an operation called Bad Bug Media, who I have a little bit of a interaction with those guys.
Mike
I was
Tenner.
involved. Yeah, Mike Tenner. I was involved in the Monster World development script, and they were nice enough to credit me for being involved with this. So I just love these guys already. But in this case, what they got is it is kind of a saucy pirate tale with monsters. Are you familiar with this one, Judah?
I'm familiar with it. I haven't read it, but I've seen it being advertised. Looks really sick. Everything that comes out of that studio is sick.
Yeah, you ever do any work for them?
No. No, I'm just a backer. I have reached out to Mike to ask him questions because he's a very accomplished, very knowledgeable crowdfunder. And he's very generous with his with advice and with his time. So,
well, I suppose I should mention while we're on this subject. Look at that! You're talking about a $29,000 Kickstarter. So these guys are not messing around. JD, you've got some experience with these fellas. What do you make of it?
I mean, they produce good-looking books. I mean, I haven't, like Judah, I haven't read them yet, or I haven't read any of them. But I mean, they produce good-looking books. Obviously, they know what good art is. So sometimes that lends to itself. Hopefully, they know what good writing is. So hopefully, they'll go hand in hand. But I haven't heard anything. I've only heard good things about these guys. So,
I've read the Vanya series. I really liked that. Thought it was pretty good, and a couple of the other series. There's some guys. They have a series called. I'm drawing a huge blank, but it's like a whole. It's a whole like horror future world, and it's really good. And they started producing that. And
are you talking about I Am Wrath by any chance? I think it's called.
No, I'm not.
Okay, that's the one that I follow.
Yeah.
There's another one.
I'm talking about Discordia. Discordia.
Yeah. I met him, Patrick Biermeyer.
Yeah, that is the bomb. That is a outstanding comic book series.
Good stuff.
I just wrote it down in my notebook.
That's great, man. Yeah, very classy, very classy. So, Jeffrey, what's your take? First off, have you ever done any work for the Bad Bug?
I have not. I did reckon that was as soon as that logo came up. I was like, I recognize. I see them promoting their Kickstarters in my various indie comics feeds, but I haven't. I'm not that familiar with them. I'm gonna check out Discordia as soon as we hang up.
Okay. Well, I got a follow-up question, and we'll just take a quick spin on this one. First, I'd like to disclose that I got my start in writing comics from this fella, Martin Dunn. So I got a little bit of a bias. I really love Martin. He's a terrific fellow. And he was the one who told me that I should take my animation script, which I was having exactly 0 success with, and make it into what the kids today would call a comic book. And that was what I think I got. I think I've written 17 books since then, something like that, maybe 18. And of course, various anthologies and this and that. So thank you, Martin. I'm grateful for that. But I'm going to ask a tough question because we asked the tough questions on the Creative Cranium. Some people might say something like, well, it's difficult for writers to get noticed if they're writing sort of saucy material because it's slightly aimed at a different audience. I'm not sure if I would say that. Judah, what would you say?
That is a difficult question. I definitely think there's a huge market for that kind of stuff, and I support anyone who learns the market, finds their audience, and pursues them. So that's kind of my diplomatic answer. I would probably I'm not a saucy writer by any means. I think there's one sex scene in my series and it hasn't even happened yet. It's in like it's a classy sex. It's going to be like an implied sex scene. So that,
hey, you're in the room with writers. When you let's be specific. When you say implied sex scene, what does the panel show?
Well, okay, so you see him in a cabin. That you see him in a safe house. Spoiler alert, by the way. I'm going to be vague, but you see him in a safe house, and they have kind of a conversation, and then they get on the rug, and then they're in the rug in front of the fire, and they're talking, they're kissing, and then the next scene is there's.
Be honest. Is it a scene of a train going into a tunnel?
No, it's a chimney. It's a chimney stack with smoke coming out.
White smoke.
But yeah, I mean, I'm not like I'm not anti-sex. It's just by any means, but it's just I
not in your own material.
It's just not how it's not the focal point of my work.
Okay,
that's not me throwing shade. Like I have
exactly. And yeah, a quick thing. We're going to view all the projects tonight in a positive light. I'm not throwing shade either. These are just we're going to ask questions. So JD, I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you feel that as a writer, it might be harder to be when I say taken seriously, I mean dramatically, with kind of saucier material? What's your 2 cents?
Well, here's the thing. As someone who has written quite a bit of saucy material,
I know say you're pretty saucy.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is, all right. So back in the 90s, because I'm old, I wrote a book called
the 1990s. Wow.
Yeah.
Previous century.
Back in the prior century. I wrote a book called La Blue Girl. And I mean, look, the opportunity came up to me. It was an adult book, right? And I had a choice. I could either get a regular job or I could write comics. And I was just like, well, let's write comics. And it led to other things. I wrote Tenchi Muyu, I wrote Phantom Quest Core, I wrote a few other things. And it was a lot of fun, right? And the thing is even when I wrote that story and I knew I had to have a certain amount of sex scenes in it, right? I made sure to have a story in it, right? So there's a story in there, so, I mean, you could read it, you can do other things to it. You can enjoy it in many different ways.
What other things?
Well, I'll let you use your imagination for that one. But it was.
Smoke stack just went off in my room, blowing white smoke. What's going on?
But yeah, I mean, the thing is if you take the work seriously, it doesn't matter what you do, right? You can write good work. You understand? I mean, no matter what it is, whether it has sex in it or not, whether you're doing it as just a romp or whatever, if you're using it, like Bill Willingham wrote a book called Ironwood, which he also illustrated back in the day. You understand? And I mean, if you read it, it's a fantasy adventure with a lot of sex in it, right? So I mean, it just depends what you like and what you don't like.
And by the way, life has a writer could make the compelling argument. Well, hey, life has sex in it. This is actually more true to life. Jeffrey, what's your 2 cents on?
I mean, I think sex in comic books for adults is refreshing. It's probably one of the reasons why when I dip my toes back into mainstream superheroes, I'm kind of like, oh, this isn't really for me anymore because I think I have more adult sensibilities in a lot of ways, and that's why I veer towards indie comics or Vertigo, or I mean, if you think or Criminal, I mean, you think of a lot of those big writers there, or Sex Criminals with Matt Fraction.
Yeah,
love that book.
You know, they're putting sex in the books, but it's not to be titillating per se. It's just
in a playful
like
kind of way.
Dramatic writing for adults, a lot of the times, and so much of our other forms of media have become so sanitized. You know, I've been really getting into watching 80s horror and action movies recently, and it's kind of like refreshing to see like random nudity again. And, like,
yeah.
But yeah, so I have nothing against it. I don't think any publisher or any editor is going to care that you wrote sex in your book. The market on Kickstarter it seems like titillating sells the best, even if it's just on the covers.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, I think, you know, publishers and editors at all are really only care if your books sell more than anything else, and that they that they like it. So I don't think it's a hindrance. The hindrance would be if you didn't do it well and people didn't like it when they read it because it was so corny or pornographic, say, or whatever, you know.
So allow me to be just vulnerable for a second.
Okay,
it's really for me, like, the reason I have any hangups about it, it's really jealousy. It's a me problem, because I ran my Caron 13 #1 campaign, and we got 167 backers. We blew away our goal. It's modest, but that's a huge victory, you know, for me as this very small creator. But while I'm on Kickstarter, you know, I'm like celebrating, you know, my success. And then I look over at like what's doing the best right now. And I look at the first 10 things, and it's just like titty. And it's, I mean, you know, I'm not knocking it, but I'm like, man, you know,
but it's okay to not.
I wish
do
people
that,
felt this way about.
It's okay to not do it. I understand the trap, and one of the things you guys have seen, if you haven't seen it in the last 6 months, you will see it in the next 6 months. Which is many of the creators who are not doing that have seen this doorway and have now not only opened the door, but they've plunged right through with these sort of dramatically sexy covers that have little, if anything, to do with the book.
It's cheesecake.
I've definitely backed a rated X cover before.
Yeah. And by the way, again, you know, we're not throwing shade. This is something, like I say, I'm jealous of it. Bear in mind, viewers, the one I just showed you, that is a $29,000 Kickstarter. So that's a whopper. And just, I guess I'll take the closing word on that one. You know, Martin Dunn, one of the most respected writers. And it was good to see him back on this project, and even mentioned, hey, I got a concern a little bit. Maybe a concern wasn't what he said, so I don't want to speak for him. But he said, hey, I hope it's still being taken seriously, even though it's sort of, you know, saucy. I think he might have said it was ribald. So, but you know, the artwork, again, just to review it before we go back, look at these pages. I mean, they're amazing.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Beautifully colored, beautiful renderings. Like every page is a work of art. So hey, we're going to jump over to our next subject, which is another creator who delves heavily into the metal scene. I'm going to talk about Matt Knowles. I Am Keto, right? And by the way, he's got like 3 projects. We'll just take a brief spin on each of them. He is one of the main guys right now who is mixing metal music with his graphic novels. And we also share an artist similar to Judah and I. Judah, are you familiar with this guy?
Yeah, I am. Haven't read this, but I'm familiar with who he is. This looks great. This is beautiful.
Yeah, and I didn't know. Have you heard any of the music by any chance? No. And he has definitely, out of all the ones we're going to see, he's the heaviest. It's definitely ultra heavy and growling, and seriously, it'll peel the paint off, you know.
Okay.
What is your level of metal? Like what's the heavest you can go to? Or is it all good?
I like bands from every subgenre. You know, I like death metal bands. I like grindcore bands, black metal bands. But my favorite it tends to be more in the like 80s thrash metal scene, bands like Testament and Exodus and Overkill.
Nice. Bonded by Blood.
Oh, love Bonded by Blood. That's such a good
Rotten
album.
to the core.
Yeah, I just saw Overkill. I just saw them live.
I thought I saw that on Facebook. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, but that's my favorite. I also dig like, you know, the classics, Maiden and Priest and Sabbath and Dio, and then I'm really digging like as far as newer stuff goes. Like I like the kind of return to traditional metal sounding bands like Night Demon and I like Ghost. And then there's actually. Sorry, you got me started on it. I'm going to.
It's okay. Remember, initially we had all musicians, so I kind of want to work music into this. This is definitely the place to do so, because I'm telling you. And I mentioned Matt. Let me give a quick shout out too. It's In Symmetry Creations. It's both of them. It's Matt and Steph, who I almost neglected to mention. So make sure I got that in there. But they do this, and also here we go. You guys see that? Tales from Nocturnia. And this is the one that we share an artist on. JD, what's your 2 cents worth on Matt and Steph?
They create great books. I've actually backed the first one in Keto. I haven't. Daphne, she backed this one, Tales from Nocturnia, and I stole them. I have yet to read them though. So, yeah. But they produce really good books. I really enjoyed the Keto book. So.
He will mention when I speak to him that I was like, oh, it's got this metal theme soundtrack, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't forget, Matt, there's an orchestral version, which, man, this is a man after my own heart. I'm going to put that in the comments because that's one of the coolest things. I love sweeping orchestral versions of songs. And I say that without any irony. I like woodwinds. I like flutes, and you're going to see that in our next song coming up. Moving over to Jeffrey. Jeffrey, so you've got a musical past behind you.
Yeah.
When you're writing metal songs, do you like to hear them in like string versions?
I'm trying to think. I remember there was that Muzak version of Metallica from like 20 years ago that I would listen to ironically.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was a loaded question, and that one wasn't too. That wasn't the the Metallica kind of was a grim example.
Well, if you think about like kind of late 80s before grunge comes in and changes everything, all those hair metal bands would have released their like sweeping orchestral music videos. From Guns N' Roses on down, like
exactly.
The Scorpions did it with the Berlin Philharmonic.
So that was like a very that was a trendy thing to do. I want to say like 86 to 89 was to hire the orchestra for your third record or whatever. And then I know Matt and Steph briefly and In Symmetry Creations because they sold the Ghost Planet ash can from Scout Comics, I think, and did some of our promotion with us back then.
Cool.
But I didn't know, because that's Matt's hat, right?
Yeah. For those of you, if you don't know at home, these guys have the whole look, and even the booth looks. They're definitely at the top of their craft.
I wish I'd known he was. We didn't get to talk much really in the couple meetings we had. It was more about like the marketing of my book or whatever. And so I wish I'd known they made music, because I would have had that conversation then.
Yeah. What do you think, Jeffrey? Did I ever ask you what is the connection with comic makers and music?
Well, I think there's something, one thing that appeals to me, like you said, it's getting a group of people together that kind of puts you on the hook for finishing your task. Also, it like gives you like doing independent stuff and just making it yourself. Like your deadlines are your own. You don't have an editor or a publisher telling you it has to be in by this time most of the time. And so there's that group effort, and it felt really natural because I'd been in bands since high school, and I was a writer. I was in grad school for fiction writing, and still wasn't only curious about making comics then, and this is like the early 2000s. And then when I had the opportunity to start making them, I realized it was a lot of the same project of wrangling the same 5 kittens to get together and do things.
Yeah.
You each have your part, and you can work it out. So that, and I just think maybe being in a band is more common than making comic books. So you're just likely to have artistic people have some musical capacity, also do other things, you know.
It does seem to be a truism that in most cases the person was in the band first. And
Well, we
I
grow
guess
up in band, in jazz band, and marching band, and like that's something that gets handed to you like in 6th grade. So, and while you might be doodling your comics and stuff, this is like institutions who are telling you to, like, school is saying, here, play this trombone or whatever. And so it's like a part of our DNA, maybe a little greater, just institutionally.
there's also a possible element that if it was someone that was in a band before and they learned the skills of how you get 3 or 4 creative people over a finish line, that same person that survived right there, he also survives in the comic scene.
Yeah.
So it's maybe just like it's like a survivor bias thing, right?
Yeah.
So, JD, you get final word on Heirs of Isildur. That's from our friends over at Insymmetry Creations.
Listen,
I recommend it. What do you got to say? You get the final word.
Great people, great work. I mean, that's all I can say. Matt is awesome. His partner, she's. I mean, I've had them both on the show, my show multiple times. I mean, they're great. So, and I can, it's always awesome having them on. It's always awesome looking at their books. So, I would always suggest getting their stuff. So,
yeah,
they do great work.
Especially if you're a metalhead. So the next guest
I share with you guys.
The next guest I got for you is, a couple of us know this person. It's one of the best series I think that is out there right now. Of course, I am talking about Boston Metaphysical Society. Judah, are you familiar with this one?
Yes.
Madeline Holly Rosen? I'll let you take the point. What do you think of Boston Metaphysical Society?
It's cool. I mean, the art, as you can see, is like exquisite and really solid coloring. It's a really good team.
Yeah, she gets the best colorist. I always ask her.
Yeah.
JD, you know Madeline. What do you think of her writing?
I really like it. What I really enjoy about it is that she's doing something that's unique to her. Like, not a lot of people are working in this space where it's like this techno punk, not cyberpunk. What's the other one? Where it's steampunk.
Steampunk.
Right. So she takes this like steampunk Victorian type of bent, and I really, really enjoy that. And she uses historical figures, and some historical figures that aren't so as well known. Right.
And it's got a little twist on it too.
Right. So I think that's really cool. I've read, I don't know, at least 3 of the trades, 3 of her trades. I think I read, and I backed the last one, so I'm waiting on that one. So Madeline, get my book. No.
Yeah. This is good stuff. I definitely recommend it. What I liked in particular is the character development, and I like the fact that this is right up against what I call historical fiction. Like I said, it's with a twist, so it's not too historical, but it's definitely in a cool way. So Jeffrey, I'm going to give you the question on this one. What's your take on historical fiction and how it can be worked into comics?
Oh boy. I love historical fiction. I'm actually working on a thing now. I don't know if anyone has ever read Please Kill Me, the oral history of punk rock.
Yeah.
Where I'm aping that in a lot of ways and making a fantastical story out of it, but using that as like, mid 70s Bowery CBGBs as like a historical location where some of those either figures themselves or a wink and a nod type character will appear. So I'm all for it. And this looks amazing. This looks completely pro, like that looks like Marvel house style, you know, like I could definitely see this on the shelves of any bookstore.
Yeah, and she also has written a book of it's like how to crush it on Kickstarter or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I noticed the skulls and the goggles of the man
Yeah.
plugging in something. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and by the way, the whole book looks like that too, and super high production value. And one of the things that I always mention about the colors, they always almost have like a little bit of a watercolor feel in the pages. It's just really well done. So if you're a steampunk fan or historical fiction fan or anything kind of paranormal, like I say, we didn't really emphasize that, but that's a heavy element. Definitely check it out. That's Boston Metaphysical Society. So we're clicking right along here. Let's see who we got next. I saw Mr. Corkin out there in the comments. That's Whitefire comments. Let's take a quick look. Raise Hell, The Forsaken Future. I didn't know about Gabriel Hand of God. That's Whitefire Comics. I'm a follower of one of his projects. That's The Forsaken Future. I know about that one because we share an artist as well, Mr. David Dion. So, Julia, what do you see anything here you like?
Yeah, I love these covers, especially the Forsaken Future.
That's the one I got. He does a cool thing in his post-apocalyptic fiction. You open it up in the beginning, has like a weather report type thing of how bad the climate's going to be. I thought that was a cool touch.
That is cool. I like that. You had something like that in Water Wars too.
Yeah, I'm a map guy. I got a lot of maps in the book.
Yeah, I like that. I like that good world building. But this cover is especially engaging just because I like seeing like an action like there's different kinds of covers. You have covers that sort of like show the vibe of the comic, and then you have covers that show like this is happening, and I like seeing the characters like action pose like in the middle of it.
Yeah, there's a pretty broad range of interpretation on covers. Not that that's a new thing. Comics have always been that way. JD, what do you make of comics that have covers that don't necessarily show what's going on in the inside? And also comment on Forsaken Future if you like. I threw you a curveball question.
Okay, as far as Forsaken Future, I'm not familiar with it. It looks good though. So I mean, I like the covers. They look really nice. Now, as far as your question is concerned, it depends what you're into, right? I tend to, depending on what project, like I said, with the Oswald Chronicles, when I'm hiring a cover artist, I obviously have my A cover, which is the artist on the book, usually Jay Gonzalez or Renio Tillis. And then I'll have a B cover done by a guest artist. And usually what I'll do is I'll send them the entire comic. And I'll be like, here's a comic. Here's a cover that the original artist did. Come up with a cover, right? And it's usually based on that. Now, I'm doing Magi's Grace, which is a bit more on the, sexy cover thing. And, that one is just a lot of pinups. And it's just, some of them are cool. And then sometimes you have to try to incorporate the story with the sexy, right? You know what? I got this here so I can show us. This is a book that I did early on in my career. I published this in '93, right? So this will eventually, we're remastering it. We're going to recolor it. We're going to put it out.
That's sick.
Now, the thing is that this is Magique. She's one of the main villains in the book. This guy right here, his name is Mouse and Acrobat. But anyway, it incorporates the sexy with the story. You understand? So there's some story elements in this cover, but you have some sexy to go with it too. So there you go.
How do you feel about like the super minimalistic? Like the best example I can give you is actually one of my favorite covers of all time. But I don't know if you've ever seen the cover of Rye Zero. And it's just the outline of Rye with the red circle behind him on a white.
Oh yeah, sure.
I love it. It's so simple and it's so like minimalistic, but it like it hits so much harder than something like elaborate might have for that book.
Yeah, yeah. Some of those. I mean, you look at someone like Tim Sale, God rest his soul, and other similar artists like that, Mike Mignola, and there are other artists out there who do similar styles to that, where it's just very minimalistic. Jay Lee sometimes comes to mind. You know, I mean, you look at this stuff, it's a little complex, but there is
like a duochromatic kind of thing.
Right. And I mean, sometimes when it's done correctly, I mean, it's very powerful. So I enjoy those. I'm like open to like all kinds of styles. So.
Do you think people shy away from that on Kickstarter?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and by the way, that's a great question.
It's a very unsophisticated. I mean, I hate to put it like this. Sometimes I feel the palette of a lot of the. I mean, look, everybody enjoys what they enjoy, right? I mean, I've been reading comics since I was 8 years old, and like I said, I'm old, so I've been exposed to a lot. So I enjoy everything from like Tim Vigil, Bernie Wrightson, Hernandez brothers. You understand? I mean, you know, Will Eisner. I mean, you know, it's a big spectrum that I enjoy. And I just think sometimes I feel that not enough fans have been introduced to those different styles, those different fields. You know, you know, like where's Sam Keith today? You know, like where, you know, yeah. So
you're also taking a risk. Like when you put something on Kickstarter, you're taking a risk, and I think people might be afraid of like, if I do something very simple and minimalistic that is good, that hits the right notes, but it's just like maybe I'm losing backers because I'm not being elaborate enough. Do you know what I mean?
I think you could be right. Jeffrey, I'm going to give you the last word if you'd like to share your thoughts. Let's say whether you, because I know actually you have, your covers are very, you have a couple stylized ones, don't you?
Yeah, Ajnaz was like that, where it's just the silhouette of the band in front of another silhouette of the ape that's a big part of the story. So it's very iconic. It's eye-grabbing on a table. We always get lots of comments on it. But then my concern, even at the time, was that it didn't really show what was in the book for curious comics folks. Like it was a good design and cool art, but you kind of had to know the book to know what it was representing in a way, rather than showing what it was representing. And you know, we weren't Bill Sienkiewicz or or selling a character that's already known, like Rye or whatever. I wanted to talk about these covers. What I like about them so much is they kind of have that ultimates directive of something iconic, but you can also tell it's from something in the book. I mean, I guess just because also you don't really recognize the characters. That's not Spider-Man, that's an Owlman. But so I like that idea of, which I think of the best covers are something iconic, but also something from inside the book.
Yeah, well said.
Like that movie poster version that we see a lot, that let's see, that we did with Killer Bad, or where you're like, you know, just getting a shot of all the characters, and all the characters are in there, but it's not really like revealing a plot point. But then if you think about all those amazing like uncanny X-Men covers, like a Silvestri cover from the like mid to late 80s, and how they would be like, I always think of that, you know, Wolverine turning into a Brood cover, or where it is like this like seminal moment from within the comic, also super iconic and pops off the shelf. So I think these Forsaken Future covers are really doing the work of a good cover.
Yeah. Thanks for that cogent analysis. I agree with everything you said. And also, I do know those fellows over there. It's a great team. Please go over and show whitefirecomics.com your support. Okay, so next up, you know, I love great titles, and it's one of the reasons why I'm often furious with J.D. Calderon, is because he thinks of better titles than I do. But one of my favorite people that I have met on the convention circuit has one of the cooler titled books out there. I'm talking about Dan Price.
Bigfoot.
He's got Bigfoot Knows Karate. And man, I tell you, whoever came up with this title has to be given the gold ribbon. Judah, are you familiar with this one?
Yeah, this is a kick-ass series.
Yeah, share your 2 cents with us, please.
Well, it's awesome. It's a great concept. It's like the Bigfoot story, but he's a ninja, as the title suggests. But yeah, it's really it has kind of like a, I don't know if this is the intent, so forgive me, Dan, if I'm mischaracterizing, but something about the style and the paneling gives me like that Eastman 80s Eastman TMNT #1 feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Agreed.
And it's sick. I've been back in this series for a while, and yeah, definitely something. Definitely find the back issues. Definitely you want to check this one out.
Yeah, a super fun guy on the convention circuit too. JD, when you first heard Bigfoot Knows Karate, were you mad because the title was cooler than yours?
No, it's a little different than the type of titles I come up with, but it is a very cool title. I have to admit, it's a cool book too. I have one of the issues. I think I have the first issue. I read it, and I remember enjoying it. It's been a while. It's like when I got it, but yeah. But listen, I mean, it looks like a lot of fun. You know, I mean, Bigfoot knows karate, right?
Right.
You know.
And he also has worked with covers on one of my other pals, Mr. Jason. So we'll give him a shout out. Nice job, Jason. Jeffrey, what's your 2 cents on Bigfoot Knows Karate?
Well, I recognize this one. This one has penetrated into my sphere at the time. Like I've come across this in the past. And it's and I'm sure it was the first or one of the first, but it makes me think of this kind of parallel thinking and zeitgeisty stuff. I see a lot of like Bigfoot as this now. There was one where he was like Moonshine Bigfoot and was like
I'm a backer on that one too. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a one where he's a NASCAR driver. There's like lots of like Yeti and Bigfoot as
Bigfoot is the new
I never
orange.
thought about before. So I think they were ahead of a movement here.
Mhm.
I think you're right. There's been a resurgence in, I make a cryptid book as well. And I've noticed even a couple people have written to me. I always think this is so kind. I love indie creators. I've had like people write to me like, hey, I'm making a cryptid book too. Is that, like, I don't really think I'm copying you. And I'm like, no,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
I said, look, cryptids I get it. It's popular right now. So I'm a fan of Dan Price's work. Please go there and buy this book with confidence. I give Bigfoot Knows Karate my highest recommendation. And before we go, it looks like we got a pre-launch going. So I'm going to put that in the comments. While I'm posting this and getting the next one ready, I will. Oh, hold on. JD, I'll let you answer that while I'm getting the page ready. If you have any words to say.
Well, yeah, I mean, I find it funny that you would give me this as marketed very well when I'm the person who markets the least. I probably put out the most books, but I market the least. So, but yeah, but I've seen his book all over the place, and yeah, he does a great job of getting it out there. Yeah.
All right, hey, we could not have a year-end countdown without mentioning this fella. Our next submission. And the easiest way to find all his stuff is to go to kickricchard.com. I'm going to put that link out there in just a second. But I'm talking about Mr. Richard Fairgray. Man, this guy is prolific. He churns out books at an amazing rate. And even more compelling, they all have sort of this. I mean, the guy's creative with a capital C. I find it difficult to even describe his genre. Judah, are you familiar with any of the Richard Fairgray books?
I'm familiar with him as a person. We've talked on Twitter, the Voice Twitter thing a couple times, and I like talking to him. He's a really nice guy. I haven't read his books yet, but I always, every time I see him, like, make a mental note. I do want to check it out because you hit the nail on the head when you said he was creative with a capital C, because seems like he's always got something very interesting sounding and very exciting that he's working on.
Yeah, and he always has like these crazy page designs, and it's all very, very odd. I mean that in a good way. Like, I love odd, as you probably said. Yeah. JD, are you familiar with Richard Fairgray?
I'm not, actually. I'm kind of surprised. I mean, it looks really. I mean, by what I'm seeing, it looks really nice. Yeah, I have to keep my eye out. So.
Yeah, he also does like. Some of the stuff is kind of like, I guess you'd call it almost multimedia.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely heavy duty stuff.
So is it all pen and ink like this?
Yeah, and I'm also going to pull up. He also did Ex-Wives of Frankenstein, which we were talking about how much we loved. Does that show? There we go. The Ex-Wives of Frankenstein. Look, the one cover is like a doll cutout kit.
It's cool.
Yeah, two women living in the aftermath of monsters, trying to not be monsters to each other. And like the panels and stuff he does are like there's legitimately like spiral pages, and one was like a 14 or 16 panel page. It's like a crazy person making a comic.
Sometimes those are the best comics.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And my understanding is he's been winning some awards lately too. Jeffrey, are you familiar with the Ex-Wives of Frankenstein?
I'm not, but I am familiar with Richard Fairgrave's work because I found it impressive. You saw me turning around. I think I have a Kickstarter I backed behind me. I'm not sure which one. So in the stack somewhere behind me.
It's hard to tell. Richard Fairgrave is like one of those J.D. Calderon types where they put out 3 or 4 books a month, you know.
Yeah, so I've always been impressed with the stuff that I've seen online, and go look and like click through his links and stuff because he's doing quality work. So yeah, I definitely recognize him.
Yeah, look at this art style on some of these books.
He's kind of one of those artists you see and you start thinking of like, okay, what would this person work well with me on that I might already have a script in the drawer, or like can I get him sort of thing.
Yeah, he is a little bit NSFW, I guess you'd say. So fair warning, people who are just checking this out for the first time. But we already said how, you know, if things can be done well, it's certainly, I guess the way that I would put it is, I don't necessarily always love this type of material, but I always love the way Richard makes it. Like, it's so inventive, and just the page design, it like makes me jealous. I wish I could make better pages, you know. So please go over and check that out. The easiest way to follow him, that's over at kickrichard.com. Mr. Richard Fairgrave, one of my pals. Congratulations on your year, Richard. Next up, we're going to take a look at one of the new creators on the scene. It's Mr. Sean Wood, The Fog Within, a dystopian action mystery comic. This is one of my favorites. I'm a backer on it, and it has a very cool sense of, I mean this in the most complimentary way. It has a cast. They're a little bit like sort of like a G.I. Joe type futuristic combat team. And it's also got some supernatural elements, but I like the fact how the characters are, like I say, sort of in their own universe, kind of like you could picture action figures being based on them. Judah, have you checked out The Fog Within at all?
No, I haven't. I was just Googling it because it looks really cool. But yeah, I like that. I like that cover image. I haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah, that's something that, you know, I'm already predisposed toward sci-fi. And I think it was brave of him to say, hey, I'm going to jump in and do this book. And they're heroes, but it's not necessarily, you kind of have to check it out. It's more paranormal than, I guess that's a good way to put it. JD, what's your 2 cents on The Fog Within?
I've had Sean on the show a few times. Cool dude. I haven't read the book yet. There's a reason for that. And that's because I tend to be a trade waiter. So I'm waiting for him to put out his first trade. But I'm looking forward to it because it does look like a lot of fun. So
yeah, he's a great guy. And I've met his dad too, and his dad's real supportive of him developing a comic career, which I think is just terrific. Which, speaking of which, is so Jeffrey, when you started out as a writer, I noticed that. Well, I want to ask you, did you have like encouragement from family members, or did you just jump right in?
I mean, encouragement from family members. I mean, they just knew I was like happy I was going to college and then grad school. So I mean, school was, I guess, the support there. And then for comics specifically, you know, I was in New York, and I was known as like the comics guy in my group. And so This was the 2000s, so these things called magazines still existed. And
Right.
and so I had a friend who was an editor at Details magazine who had just seen the Sin City movie and loved it, and she was like, I want you to write a comic, and we'll get a beer or alcohol to be the sponsor, and we'll run it in Details. I was like, awesome. And we did that. And that was like my first published work. And so I came up with this idea that matched what she liked, and it got me the job. And then they were like, oh, this is awesome. No, thank you. Come up with 3 more pitches. And then they picked the one I liked the least. And then we went from there. But so that support came from peers and community, than more than family say. Not that they were like against
it.
They're
Yeah.
sort of aloof to the idea.
I think that's a good way to put it, because I always wonder if, how do I want to say this? Let me think of the correct phrasing. I think my parents were generally pleased that I was a writer.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure they're doing backflips that I'm a comic book writer primarily.
Right.
And in my experience, if you're not a comic person already, you kind of don't really understand it sometimes. And again, that's not me ripping on someone, but some people don't have that familiarity with what we would call sequential art.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
And that's changing, right? That's changing with, like, all my 7-year-old and all her friends do is read graphic novels aimed at girls.
What's the comic you recommend to people who don't read comics?
Oh, that's a great question.
Not Watchmen.
Let's touch on something before we answer that, because we have to remember that there are these, of course, general changes. So we like to say things like, well, to turn somebody onto it, I'd recommend what I liked. But Jeffrey actually just made a really good point, which is that a lot of the crop of the current people that even make comics don't really do it because they like comics. They saw some derivative, meaning they saw the Sin City movie. And again, I'm not saying that's bad, but it's different than somebody who read Grant Morrison. Like, that was me. Hey, I want to write like Grant Morrison or like The Watchmen. Like, it's a different thing. Not a bad thing. Let's keep in mind there's a guy who wrote Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which sold 290 million copies. So that shows that the audience is out there for sequential art style material. So let's take that question seriously. What comic would we recommend to get
Scott
someone
Pilgrim
into it?
was a big one for me in like the 2010s. I could hand that to a 20-something of no matter what their gender, and they would usually come back and want to read book 2 or whatever.
Nice. That's a good one. And that has a musical element too.
Yeah.
I try to diagnose what they like outside of, like, if someone likes, my dad, I've been trying for years to get him to read comics, but he likes thrillers. He likes like prestige dad TV, like Tom Clancy stuff. And, he's a big fan of Lioness, which I also like.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I recommend him like Ed Brubaker stuff, because that's like in the wheelhouse of
Greg Rucka stuff.
Yeah, Greg Ruckus. Oh, hell yeah.
Like, of Spy stuff, especially his early work. He had that Oni run of Spy stuff.
Yeah. So like, you got to, people pigeonhole comics, and it's comics' own fault. But if you zoom out, it's a medium, just like TV, just like books. So if someone likes a certain kind of story, and it's going to exist in comics, and for people that like that kind of stuff, for people who want like teen romance, there's a plethora of that. People who want political thrillers, stuff that's really dense, there's stuff like that. There's fantasy. I just read a comic book last year about the American prison system. It's like a nonfiction book about prison system. It's illustrated. So
I love, I lean toward international books, manga in particular, and maybe not in particular, because I like French and Italian stuff too. I don't think we heard from JD. JD, what would you recommend to someone to try and get them interested in reading comics?
It depends on the person, like once I get a feel for the person, I know what they're interested in. But, depending on the person, I mean, I can go anywhere from, for me personally, like something like Fables to something like, because I think Fables is an easy in. It's a very easy story to read, and the artwork is really, really good in it. And another one would be something like Will Eisner's The Building, right? Where
Yeah.
if you want something that maybe a little bit more serious, so it just depends on the person, right? So I don't know if I'd want to just hand a mouse.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
good example. Not exactly a walk through the park.
Right. So
I
it
think
just
that's
depends.
the best answer, and it's kind of a combination of all three of you, is that you got to tailor to the person, right? And
Right.
maybe start with something that's not too dense, get them used to the
Mhm.
format, sort of sailing through pages. I love the international stuff, and one of the reasons is that they tend to, the pages tend to be kind of rhythmic, right? Especially in Italian comics. Fumetti, am I saying that right? And
Well,
also manga does it too.
well, Fumetti tends to be the photograph comics.
Oh, well, I've never seen that. I was using it in the implication of Italian comics.
Oh, okay. No.
But I didn't know there was photo comics, but I'll have to check that
No.
out too.
Yeah. My. What's funny is, my mother, she would buy these things they were called novellas, right? My mother's a little Hispanic woman, and they would sell these novellas, and they were coming out of Mexico and Spain, and they were all in Spanish, and they were photo comics. It's very, very strange. You could find them, in bodegas here in New York City, and they would just be selling them. They were like $1.25 or something. They'd be about, maybe an inch thick, right? And they were small. They were.
You say photo comics, you mean the panels are photographs?
Yeah.
With
Yeah,
lettering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen him.
Yeah.
I know what he's talking about.
Yeah. They're big in other countries.
Yeah.
They're big in other countries. It's just not here.
I saw one done by Bob Burden once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, let's give a quick shout out here, but we'll close up. I went off topic on Sean a little bit. This is Recon and the Little One. That's live on Kickstarter. Excuse me. That's a pre-launch on Kickstarter right now. So I'm going to drop the link to this in the comments. This is his last and most recent project, Recon and the Little One.
Nice.
So that's something I'll give him a shout out because that's one that's coming up. And he's been a great supporter and he's been doing great stuff. But I wanted to make sure I saved enough time to get a couple more in. Let's see, who could be the correct one to lead us on this one? I'm going to just anonymously hand the mic to JD.
Yeah, so this is the book that I was like, everyone was like, don't launch over the holidays. I was like, oh, why not? There you go. So I put this out. I do this with C. Michael Lanning. This is Magi's Grace 1 and 2. This particular image is done by a young lady named Lena Dye, and it's one of the covers that's available. So basically, what's going on? You have a gentleman. His name is Magi. He's a mercenary, right? And his partner Grace, who is a sorceress. And basically, this is the team you hire when you have cryptids and the supernatural. They're clashing, right? And this is the team they bring in to, I guess, negotiate very, very vigorously, kind of violently, between the two groups. And currently, this particular story, we have vampires invading Innsmouth. So it's like vampires invading the world of H.P. Lovecraft and fish people. So yeah, and then there's all kinds of hilarity. It was something I did for fun. Because normally I write the Oswald Chronicles, my magical mouse story, but every now and again I do enough of that because that's pretty sanitary in the way it is. It's like I wouldn't say all ages, but maybe from like 12 and up, and it's just fantasy, right? And then once in a while I have to do something a little grimy, and that's this.
JD, you want to take this question? How is this year's crop of comics compared to other years?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about my crop of comics, I don't know.
Go with in general first.
For in general, I mean, I think as far as Kickstarter, it's funny. I've backed a lot of campaigns, and I've slowed down a little bit, but not by much. And I think there've been a lot of the books I've gotten have been very good. So, and I think that's a good thing. And I've backed at least 20, possibly even 30 campaigns this year. So, yeah. So, listen, I'm a comic book degenerate. right? So I don't have many vices. Comic books is one of them, or it's probably the only one. But yeah, I think overall, I mean, the year's been weird. You know, I've spoken to a lot of other. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it feels like this year's felt like a Xerox copy of last year. Like it's like, yeah, everything's fine. We're just doing what we're doing, you know, and that's just kind of how it felt, you know. And I was talking to Tom, or Tom Hutchison, and he's
Oh
just
yeah.
yeah, it's just like, you know, it just feels like a Xerox of last year. It's just like, well, we're just kind of doing this. And I hate to say that I'm going through the motions, because I'm not going through the motions. You know, I'm putting out product. Well, I should say I'm putting out, you know, my books that I enjoy doing, but it just feels like, you know, I'm going through the same thing, which I think, which is probably telling me I have to start moving into other areas and doing other things. So
Nice.
which is,
Well,
you know,
I appreciate the
nothing
honest
against the
answer.
question.
Well, let's see if we can squeeze in a couple more. You guys mind if we go a hair over?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I gotta give a shout out to Mr. Gerald von Stoddard, Immortal Coil, nominated for an award this year. One of the, I don't want to say new artists, because I know he's been around for a while, but just tearing it up on the indie scene. Is anybody following Immortal Coil? This looks terrific.
Yeah, it's nice.
No, I like this. I wish I had seen it, because this sort of imagery really draws me in.
Mm-hmm.
I love those monochromatic style of images that.
Yeah,
really
it's kind
set
of
the
what
vibe.
you guys were talking about.
Mm-hmm. And that cover is just so sick.
And
Yeah,
even
this
the
guy-
logo hints towards the tentacles with the O, the raven on the eye. It's just
Mhm.
good looking all around.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice job, Gerald. Wish you every success in 2025. I got one other one I don't know if you guys were familiar with. This is Mr. Peter Bro. He actually put out 3 projects this year, so it's a lot to talk about. But in this case, I wanted to focus on one which I love, which is his World War I book, Mud and Madness. I'm sorry, I can't remember this fellow's name exactly correct, but I believe, tear me up in the comments, Stefano Cardoselli. Please let me know if I got that wrong. Judah, what can you share with us about Mud and Madness?
I love this cover. Like the water, I especially like the colors, like the watercolor style of like shading on the.
Are you familiar with this artist at all?
No, I'm not. Oh wait, Stefano.
I think it's
Cardoselli.
Stefano Cardoselli.
Yeah.
Has he been around for like a long time?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Once I saw this, I started following him.
Yeah. The name is super familiar. I know that there's a like a '90s artist that has a similar name. I wonder if it's the same guy.
I don't think it's the '90s guy.
No.
No. Okay. But yeah, that looks cool. I would definitely back that if I saw it.
Yeah, it's killer, right?
Yeah.
Looks like like a '90s like Sean McKeever type cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something.
Jeffrey, you got a good eye for design. I noticed you picked that out of the logo pretty fast too. So is this the type of book that you would back? Do you like war stories?
Yes, and I like horror war stories. You know, I've been watching the new Creature Commandos cartoon, and Creature
Nice.
Commandos, those like late 70s, early 80s version of books were some of my favorite things as a little kid to like stumble upon at the grocery store, where it was literally like Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy, like they were in war stories, the haunted tank and stuff.
I love those. Yeah, good one.
I'd love to see Garth Ennis do a Creature Commandos, right? Because he does the war stories so well and the horror stories so well. It'd be a good combo.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
I was thinking of
Looks
Stefano.
like it could be the cover of like a Garth Ennis book from '97 or something.
It does.
That'd be cool.
It does. Yeah, that's good stuff. So, Peter, I wish you every success with that book. I know it's available in comic shops too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that, you know, I want to ask this question. You know, for so many years, we all struggled to get into the previews catalog. And now we finally get in, and yeah, like DC and Marvel aren't in there anymore. Let's see. Let's start with JD on that one. JD, is the previews catalog less effective than in previous years?
See, problem is, again, I'm old. So I've been around self-publishing since '92 when we had 13 distributors as opposed to just the one. And it was better when we had 13 distributors. The problem is just having previews by itself. I don't think it's less effective. The problem is that we just don't have the marketplace. We don't have enough stores that are buying comics, right? So we have, let's say, 18 or 2,200 stores. There's only a small segment, probably about 10, 15% that are actually buying independent comics, right? And that's the problem. Back then, when I first started, we had close to 10,000 stores, right? So even at 10 or 15%, you have 1,500, maybe even 2,000 stores that were actually actively buying independent comic books. Whereas today, you probably only have 300 or 400, maybe 5 or 6, that are actively buying independent comics and not just doing pull lists, right? I was at Midtown Comics today, and they rack independent comics. But here's the thing: you might only find 1 or 2 copies, Whereas back in, I remember growing up, I mean, Kamiko Elementals,
Nice.
There was like this many, coming out. You would see them on the racks. So I mean, I don't think it's less effective, but I don't think it's less effective. The problem is that that we're suffering through is that we just don't have the bandwidth as far as retail opportunities out there for us. I think that's the real issue. If we had more retailers, we would have more sales. And I think that's the real issue.
Well said. Jeffrey, you have something you'd like to add to that?
Well, specifically about previews being helpful. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there are, 14-year-olds like I was who are excited to see the new previews stacked up on the counter and grabbing it to flip through. I don't know if that happens anymore. I mean, Diamond seems to be collapsing, and previews is Diamond, so
kind of increasingly going into the toy business is what it looks like.
I guess so. I don't know. All I keep reading about is that one warehouse closing and then no one getting their comics before Christmas. So.
You're talking about that one this week, right?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a black eye. Judah, do you want the... Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
Judah, do you want the final word on, is the previews catalog still relevant?
I don't know. I agree with what Jeff said, and I agree with what JD said. I couldn't really say. JD said something that was kind of got my wheels spinning about how, maybe the direct market as we know it isn't really like serving indie comics effectively. I know in these kinds of spaces, like there's like kind of like almost religious worship of like the LCS model of comic distribution, and I don't want anyone to put out a hit on me.
Right, yeah.
I don't want to be exiled from the community, but I wonder. I'll put it as diplomatic as possible. I wonder if maybe there's just not much of a future in that.
The old way.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jeffrey kind of nailed it on the head when he said that the customer's a little different. That is the nice way to put it. That maybe that person who runs up to get the catalog and flip through it, that 14-year-old kid might not be there anymore. Well,
and let me say this too, like even an indie comics friendly store, they are being flooded with content every week. Like the amount of Batman books that come out every week, which they know they can sell one Batman book more than they can maybe a popular indie comic even, takes up all their shelf space. But they're not even ordering that anymore because they don't know if they can sell through. They're all living on these razor thin margins. So, in my experience, the best way to get your book, like even book like stores that are friendly to me and that I have a relationship might not like stock and carry my book because they don't have the margins to have a book just sit on their shelf and then that the next week is going to go into a back issue bin or whatever because another 200 comics are going to come out. And so I've just found, especially locally in New York, you set up a signing, you know, you move through the books that way, especially if they were kind enough to like pre-order them or order them through Diamond. And then, you know, they're usually doing that because they know they can get you in the store. Or if you're trying to sell your Kickstarter book through stores, set up a signing. Hopefully it goes well. And if it does go well, they probably are going to buy a couple for their shelves. But then they don't have the know-how, or like if you don't have a friend in that store, you don't have someone selling that book to their customers because they don't even know it's on their shelves.
Yeah.
No?
Jeffrey, do you remember Jim Hanley's Universe, the one that was across the street from the Empire State Building?
100%. I'm good friends with Nick Purpura and Ron. So yes, I had my band used to play in their basement with their band.
Nice.
Those are some of our first New York shows when we moved from Austin, Texas to New York City. Was Jim Hanley's Universe basement. So definitely, yeah, they were the first. When I was self-publishing my Americans UK comics, Nick and Ron were the first ones to buy. I went in there with my little black and white copies, and they're like, "Cool, we'll buy 2 of each or whatever." And then I've had people come up to me at conventions like, "Where's Americans UK #5? I used to go into Jim Hanley's and get it when they were there." And I was like, "I don't think it's happening, dude." But,
I mention it because for me, that was one of the best comic shops I've ever been in, because it was just racks and racks and racks and racks of comic books.
Yeah.
And they left books out for months.
Yeah.
You could I could walk in there randomly and find some weirdo independent comic book in the middle of the racks somewhere. And they'd be like, "What the hell is this?" And you're like,
But then their store space got whittled down and whittled down. Then they had to move to like 33rd and Lex, and then they had to move to like 29th and 3rd Ave. And I would follow them because I like them, but that space got smaller and smaller.
It's unfortunate.
And then they closed the Manhattan store, so now they're only on New Dorp and Staten Island, which one of my last signings was probably there.
Unfortunately for most New Yorkers, you know, Staten Island is like on the other side of the moon.
Yeah. Exactly. And then Anyone Comics in Brooklyn and Everyone Comics in Queens. They have they're related. They're sister stores. They're really good about doing indie signings and carrying your book if you build a relationship with. St. Mark's Comics is now an Industry City in Brooklyn. And they've been great. They have the Brooklyn Indie Comics Festival every year in April now. It's outdoors, which one year was fantastic because it was gorgeous, and then last year it was kind of sucked because it threatened to rain all day. But I've had really good sales there. Like there are people there looking to buy indie books. It's in the title of the convention. It's getting bigger and bigger. I think they're going to move it inside and have some panels and stuff this year. So it's cool. It's cool. You can do it. I don't know, but yeah, as far as distribution goes through Diamond, I mean, to some degree, isn't that why you try to get a publisher so they deal with that stuff and not you? I don't know.
How do you?
Well, that's a topic for other night, but the publishers got issues of their own these days.
How does that retailer tier thing? I've seen people who run campaigns. They'll have like a retailer tier where it's like, is that effective or like?
Yeah, I always sell a couple.
Yeah.
What I do is I sell them at a loss leader because you're getting them into the stores. It's got to be a really good deal for the retailer, though.
Yeah, because they need to make more so like you're probably covering shipping for them.
Yeah.
Like if they can't make half of cover price, then there's no point in them doing it.
A little more than that, maybe even. What I've been trying to do is for they pay the shipping, I'll send the books, because if you got your books into the store you won, it's better than any advertisement.
Yeah.
So I sold those to New York stores for Killer Bad, and then I was able just to like hand deliver the books and set up a signing kind of all in one go. I don't think I got any national takers on mine. It was all people who I knew through contacts in the New York comic book scene.
So it sounds like the indie model will survive based on this final question. Listen, I want to thank you guys for coming on tonight and reviewing some of these great projects that we've seen, both crowdfunded and non-crowdfunded. There's some terrific projects in 2024. So before we go, let's just take a quick second and tell the viewers where we can find you. Start with you, Judah Rad.
I am active on Threads, Instagram, Facebook. It's all Trouble Studios. If you just go to any of those platforms and search for Trouble Studios, you'll see me. That's where I market most of my campaigns. I have a YouTube channel, not a whole lot of content. And then I used to host I Freaking Love Comics on YouTube. But sometimes I reactivate that when I'm running a campaign just to do a little bit of promo. But yeah, just if you're looking to collaborate on anything, or if you want to send your portfolio, we're always thinking about the next project. So just send your stuff our way.
Nice. Thank you, Judah, for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, man, and a pleasure to finally meet you. I'll be talking to you with some drum track questions.
Yeah. Awesome.
JD Calderon, thanks for coming at the last minute. As always, we appreciate your deep insight. Can you tell us where we can find your work?
TheOswaldChronicles.com, TallTalesOnline.com, currently on Kickstarter. And this Sunday, you'll find me on YouTube with Mr. Tim.
Oh, that's right. Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'll be there. Be there with bells on. So Jeffrey Durant, always a great guest on the show. Man, thank you so much for coming back. Tell us where we can find your work.
Thank you, Tim. Always a pleasure. This is a great time. You're a great host. Google my name as you see it on the screen. All my stuff will pop up. My website is Jeff Wright, JEF with one F, Wrights.com. And that'll also link to all my stuff. All my socials is on there. Go to Americans-UK.com. You can see my sci-fi punk rock band that I was in for about 15 years. We made some really good high-end music videos at the end of our tenure. Before everyone had babies is what
I know that
that's a good difference between rock bands and comics. I can write a script between like the raindrops of family and job, but it's really hard to like rehearse with 4 other dudes.
Yeah, great point.
Space, between the raindrops of family and career. So
well, and to the viewers for watching, thanks so much for tuning in, and I appreciate your support in 2024. We got some great things planned for next year, including, if you watch next week in this same time slot, we'll be looking at the Iranian UFO crisis of 1976. So if you want to hear about UFOs, come on back next week. Thanks for watching, and thanks so much for your support. See you next year, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.